Welcome to Trinity Place. My name is Cameron Miller. We're here in Geneva, New York. This is a little thought about the story in Matthew 22, 1 through 22, and how it relates to our spiritual practice. And I'm guessing it might be differently than what you may expect. So, what person in your life, or even a historical figure that you didn't know personally, comes to mind when I say, marked by God? Marked by God. Now, we're in a bit of a quandary here in the 21st century because we know too much. Anyone who's elevated to a pedestal sooner or later gets knocked down, which, if we thought about it for 2 seconds, is what it means to be human. No one's perfect. No one is God. But surely there is somebody in your life, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, sister, brother, guardian, teacher, mentor, friend, who you would say was marked by God. Not perfectly, but in some way that really matters, he or she reflected light. Now, though we know their darker side, and all of them had squirrely, troubling, flawed humanity, there is an easy list, or historical list. I mean, surely the Quaker abolitionist Susan B. Anthony had the mark. Frederick Douglass must have had the mark. Dorothy Day and Mother Teresa were certainly marked. The great soul Gandhi was marked. Martin Luther King Jr. carried the mark. Nelson Mandela lived and died with the mark. Some had it, some lost it, while others lived much of their lives very far off the mark, only to end up reflecting the light of God's presence with some event or act at the end. It's easy to listen to the gospel argument about paying taxes and focus on the wrong thing. And in fairness, taxes seem like the issue. It was an issue, all right. Taxes were definitely an issue. But it's not the punchline. Jesus, who we claim was uniquely marked by God, is thrown into this first century Palestinian hornet's nest about taxes. Way more dangerous and difficult than what we do when we talk about taxes. And to understand the bind that he was in is to have to know the characters in question. So in the gospel story as told by Matthew, Herodians represent religious figures who served at the whim of the civil authority and who financially and socially benefited from Roman occupation. You can imagine how they were seen. The Pharisees represent a popular movement within the religion which was at tension with that civil authority. That was because the Pharisees believed that the Roman requirement to pay taxes amounted to coerced blasphemy. Now, unmentioned in this story, but fully present between the lines, are the zealots, some of whom were religious terrorists and insurrectionists. They believed that payment of taxes amounted to willful participation in evil. So, when Jesus is asked the question of whether it's right to pay taxes or not, it was a cruel trick, a malicious strategy aimed at endangering and discrediting him. Because here's what I mean. For Jesus to say, yes, it's okay to pay taxes, it would discredit him with the majority of his peers, all of whom were way overburdened by taxes, violently overburdened by taxes. And a yes answer would also have met the wrath of the zealots. But to say, nah, don't pay taxes to Rome, was to be arrested for fostering treason and promoting insurrection. Standing between yes and no, there seemed no good answer and no room to move. But Jesus very cleverly gives a response, not an answer. And I so need to remember that strategy. You see, Jesus' response could be heard differently by different people depending upon their perspective. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's could be heard by both Romans and Zealots as the right answer. To the Romans, Caesar was God, and to the Zealots, everything belonged to God. But then, beyond being tricky with amazing depth and grace, Jesus penetrates the whole issue with one little word. Jesus wants to know whose icon is on the coin. Undoubtedly, Jesus intentionally uses the same word as in the creation story at the beginning of the book of Genesis, where it says that we are icons of God. We are created in the image of God, we translate it, but it is we are icons of God. Now, essentially what Jesus is saying with this is that whatever image may appear on the coin, you and I, we are made with the icon of God upon us. Now that may not seem like a radical thing to say today, but imagine that idea in the ancient world where slavery, the ownership of people, and military occupation, the ownership of lands and whole nations of peoples, was assumed. To say instead that we belong to God, that would be downright subversive. Money that is printed by the U.S. Mint belongs to the United States of America. It is theirs. You and I, we belong to God. You and I have been imprinted with the image of God upon us. Excuse me, I'm being imprinted by my phone at the moment. I forgot about that. Please silence your cell phones before the service begins. Right. So, money, to go back, money that is printed by the U.S. Mint belongs to the U.S. You and I belong to God. You and I have been imprinted with the image of God upon us. The image of God upon us. You and I, through our baptismal covenant, have committed ourselves to reflect the image of God the best that we know how. Our spiritual practice, then, is all about knowing and showing who we are and whose we are. Let's think about what icon is upon us. What others see when they look at us or when they encounter us in their lives. For example, with some of my fellow clergy, I see the icon of office and liturgy upon them, which I do not equate with the icon of God. A clerical collar or vestments are no substitute for the light of God's presence. But neither do I assume that social work and social service or pastoral care is in and of itself a reflection of that light. It's not so much about what we do as how we do it. When we think about those people upon whom we have seen the icon of God, reflecting from them to us and to others around us, what is it about them? What is it? What is it that makes them different, even though we've all carried the mark? I think whatever it is, it's carried on love. A light that emanates from authentic caring. It doesn't have to be gushy and sweet either, because we have all known people who care fiercely and whose concern for us is more muscular than it is graceful. I'm thinking that the icon of God glows most intensely from active caring and blatant compassion. Again, it may be in a household or in a feeding program. It may be in a classroom or a laboratory. But it is a unique presence that we feel. We feel it when we're in the presence of it. And I don't think it can be faked either. We know it when we feel it, and we recognize it when it is not authentic. But here's the thing. We've all been marked. I don't know, is it marked here? Is it marked here? Is it marked by what we do? I don't know, but we have all been marked. Every single one of us has the icon of God upon us. So the spiritual practice at the core of the baptismal covenant must be to work toward reflecting that mark. By being clear about who we are and whose we are, we look for ways to release our care and to liberate our compassion so that they show, so that they are felt by others, so that we are felt by others. That to be in our presence is to be, in some sense, in the presence of God. Now, when I say that directly like that, it seems like too big a thing. But when I think about it, about the people in my life who carried that mark and in whose presence I felt it most acutely, then I know it's possible. Honestly, I think it begins by just taking it seriously, that we are the icon of God. You and I, we are an icon of God. When I own that, when I embrace it, when I hold it, something in me, something in us starts to stir and move and wiggle up from inside us when we hold it and embrace it and own it. Well, that's all I got today. I hope it's enough to stir a little something in you. Again, we are pleased that you joined us, this community in worship today, and hope that any growth or healing or wellness that has begun in you will be carried and shared with others. Thank you so much, and the peace of God be with you.